Hello folks, and welcome to some more Diablo 3. Now, I figured I had done the other three sets, and even though I've kind of gone over Unhallowed Essence, I didn't give it a full overview like I did with the other sets, so I figured I'd just, round out the class this way. So, this is the Unhallowed Essence set, also known as the Multishot set. Our two-piece means that our generators generate 2 additional hatred and 1 discipline. Well, that's awesome, right? Like, if you take something like Evasive Focus, instead of gaining 7 hatred, you gain 9, which is awfully cool. But it also means that something like Evasive Hardened, which would normally only give you 4 hatred, excuse me, folks, had a sudden case of dry throat, which would normally give you 4 hatred, will now give you 6. So, the difference between Hardened and Focus isn't that much. You get a little more damage output this way, but, there are enough things that kind of jump out at you and enough reasons that you get close to things that Hardened is okay as a generator as well. You could use other things, but typically stick with Evasive Fire anyway. So, onto the 4-piece. Gain 60% damage reduction and deal 60% increased damage for 8 seconds if no enemy is within 10 yards of you. Well, that's awesome. Like 60 is a lot of percentage. It is a high percentage. And yeah, for damage reduction and damage, it's great. This little icon down here, this is always ticking, letting you know whether that buff is up or not. And again, 8 seconds is a long time. Things can get near you and you have plenty of time to get away, generally speaking. In fact, you generally have time to just keep shooting and kind of kite away from them, and still be a-okay. So the 6-piece. Your generators, Multishot and Vengeance, deal 20% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. Okay, well that really ties in well with the 2-piece, right? So we need to keep firing our generator to keep making sure that our discipline is topped off, but since we can, top off our discipline, that means it's really tempting to use, a vault, or certainly folks have done pretty well with Smokescreen, just a disciplined spender, and still be able to make use of this 6-piece set. But it also means that you have to be a little specific with how you gear, because 20%, even though it gets, proportionally less as you go up in value, it's still its own multiplier, so it's really important to get discipline on every piece of gear you can get it on, which is your quiver, your bow, and your cloak. Now, it's worth noting that almost always, if you have 9 discipline on a piece of equipment, whichever one it is, it's basically never worth going to 12. Unless, because you're going to have discipline on each piece of gear that can have it, and 3%, once you've kind of, lost, it's 60%. 60% once you've lost, proportionality because you've added, it's adding with all these others, is generally not as good as picking up something else. So keep that in mind. But yeah, you do want some everywhere you can get it. And that also means that one of our skill slots is immediately taken up with Preparation, Invigoration, which permanently increases maximum discipline by 20. There's no reason to not take this. That's 400% damage. Are you going to say no to 400% damage? No, of course not. So there we go. That's that taken care of. So yeah, so our generators, Multishot, and Vengeance. Okay, well great. Then we really want to run Vengeance, and especially now that you can run Vengeance with Dawn and have basically full uptime. So yeah, we're putting Vengeance on the bar, and because Multishot is reasonably expensive, we'll run Seethe so we can have the hatred regen. So, there we go. Now, from there, we look at how we have a generator and a spender. So we say, well, we're going to run focus and restraint because it would be crazy not to. Okay, cool. Then, well, we're running Multishot. So Dead Man's Legacy has Multishot bonuses built into it. So again, we've got to run it. Yang's Recurve. Multishot attacks 50% faster. Reduces all resource costs by 47%. Again, this is a bow tailor-made for this build. I keep saying you can't run without it. You can. Look, I've done like Greater Rift 55 without a Yang's Recurve. Like it's, I mean, with an ancient bow that had discipline on it, sure, fair, but still, you get the most out of this, and to build the build as well as you can, you're going to want to run a Yang's Recurve, but you could, when you're gearing up, deal without it. But yeah, this is our in-game bow. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, bracers, Wraps of Clarity. Again, this is a big damage reduction boost, and there's really not a lot else we'd want to put here. Like, the damage reduction is worth more than Reaper's Wraps really are. Definitely want a Hellfire Amulet for this build, because as with a bunch of builds for anybody, but definitely a bunch of builds for the Demon Hunter, you really want just a lot of passives. They're probably, 6, 7 passives you'd be really happy to run. And finishing up with the belt. I'm running Hunter's Wrath. I don't think Hunter's Wrath is the best belt you can run. You're probably better off running a Witching Hour, but I haven't seen a particularly good one worth running, really. The extra attack speed is great. It helps you regen your generator faster, although, again, this will do that better. But the main thing is it will allow you to spend more multi-shots in your fire proc of Convention of Elements, having more attack speed. That does not mean you should gear for attack speed necessarily, but it's a happy accident on a belt that also has a lot of critical hit chance, and and the way that this works out, you're going to have a very high critical hit chance, so proportionally, critical hit damage will be a greater damage boost than it seems like it should be. Because ideally you want these amounts to be very near each other. Well, within, you want this to be about 10% of this. So, as you can see, I'm well out of that amount. And if I could add 50 here, that would come a lot closer to our ideal ratio. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, brain. As far as what you're looking for on this gear in terms of rolls, for the helm you would want Dex, Multishot, and critical hit chance. I'm running Vitality, mainly because I just have been lazy and yeah, but you'd rather have Multishot. Again, it's additive and it's not an amazing boost in damage, but it is a boost in damage, and you need it the higher you go. Shoulders, this is pretty much what you want them to look like, just better rolls. You would rather have a secondary, or better secondaries, but hey. Dex, Vit, All-Res, cooldown. Gloves, I think you either want Dex, Vit, and double crit, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, or Dex, crit hit damage, crit hit chance, and cooldown reduction. I was playing around with area damage a lot early on this season, and it's good. Obviously, they fixed it, and it's a lot better than it used to be, but I don't think it's really as important, or important enough to sacrifice other things for this build. For the chest, so in seasons past, you would want Dex, Vit, and Hatred Regeneration. And that may still be the case. Again, you have to have Discipline as a secondary. You have to have Discipline as a secondary. And So I haven't really rolled this one yet while I think about whether I want to roll armor into Hatred Regeneration. It's probably just the best thing to do in this case. It could be that rolling, if you could roll that into all res, that would be just fine. But yeah, Hatred Regeneration is still probably best because the more hatred you regenerate, excuse, the more damage you do. Wraps of Clarity, this is just what you're looking for. Fire damage, dex, vit, critical hit chance. Obviously would prefer the hit. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know where this is coming from all of a sudden. Obviously we would prefer the crit hit chance to be 6%, but hey, and secondary, yeah, you just want a as high as possible reduced damage percent, 35 being the max, and as high as possible resistance. Probably physical being preferred, but poison is also good. For rings, dex, crit. Could be that if you want to make sure that you can hit maximum vengeance uptime, you want to have critical hit. You want to have cooldown reduction on one of them, or both of them potentially. But that is a loss of, well, it's a loss of damage. But vengeance is 40% increased damage when it's up, and again, it's more hatred for more that thing, multi-shot. So, it may be worth it. Pants, just general pants for a demon hunter. Dex, vit, all res. You can roll slow as a secondary, so that would be really great if you could do that, but doesn't always happen. Likewise on the gloves, you can roll crowd control secondaries. If you can do that, that is amazingly good. Amazingly good. But those are very, very, very rare. And yeah, boots, dex, vit, multi-shot, and you really would probably rather have all res than movement speed. For the recurve, you want high damage, percent damage, dexterity, and honestly probably critical hit. Yeah, you'd love to have critical hit on it. Cooldown reduction. But in this case, I had to roll discipline because you have to roll discipline. And the higher the resource cost reduction, the better. But 47 is fine. For the Dead Man's Legacy, so there are a lot of variables on this quiver. For one thing, multi-shot hits enemies below 50 to 60% health twice. Obviously, you want that to be 60%. Increases multi-shot damage by 75 to 100%. That's a big range. Increases hatred regeneration by 1.3 to 1.5. So this is what I was talking about, that in previous seasons you wanted on your quiver and your cloak. I'm not entirely sure. Like I say, this should be multi-shot, this vitality. I have a lot of health. I have way too much health. Really, I have way too much health. So this needs to be multi-shot, and depending on how much life I lose there, if I still felt comfortable, I would ideally want this vitality to be cooldown reduction. If not, I would want the hatred regeneration to be cooldown reduction. I would want cooldown reduction on my quiver because you need 3 pieces of cooldown reduction to hit 37% cooldown reduction here overall for your character, which gives you a full vengeance uptime with Dawn in the cube. I don't think I talked about the belt, but again, you want Witching Hour, so you want it to be dex, vit, 7% attack speed, 50% critical hit chance, ideally, with a good amount of resistance as a passive. So yeah, so that'll take care of the gear. The skills, using Evasive, Hardened. There are a number of generators you can use, but normally you either use Hardened or Focus. You can also use Focus with Ice Blink as one of your legendary gems, and that will proc Bane of the Trapped and Cull the Weak. Multishot Arsenal. Really, this is just the best way to go about using multi-shot. The rockets do a ton of damage, and are a really, really good reason to use this rune. On top of it just doing a considerable amount of damage itself. Less than the full broadside, but still quite a bit. Seethe, again, more hatred reduction is what we're looking for. Vault, I'm using Trail of Cinders because I've got Cindercoat in the cube. If you didn't, you just used Humble. It's works out basically the same. Preparation and Invigoration I've discussed again, but that's I've discussed before. But again, that's just increase maximum discipline. You really have to use that. Companion, Wolf Companion is what I'm using here. You could use something else. You could use. I have in the past. I and others have used Sentry Polar Station to proc Bane of the Trapped and Cull the Weak. It's not really necessarily where you want to be, but I guess it is something you could do. You could also run Caltrops, Bait the Trap. An additional 10% critical hit chance. You can both stand on this, and you can use this offensively to slow down enemies, and again, trigger Cull the Weak and Bane of the Trapped. And for, instead of Vault, you could use Smokescreen. You could use a special recipe on that one, but Vanishing Power. Powder might not be bad. Nah, probably Healing Vapor and Special Recipe is probably the ones you'd want to use there. Cull the Weak, you're playing a Demon Hunter. You're going to use Cull the Weak. Ambush, it's a huge damage boost against things, and I mean you're often just kind of doing this kind of deal. So you're constantly hitting new monsters, and that's a big amount of damage. Thrill of the Hunt. This is the way with this setup we're proccing Cull the Weak and Bane of the Trapped. I mean, it's really handy because you don't have to do anything special. Your skill procs it on its own. So that's great. And Awareness. Now, the reason I'm running Awareness and this setup like it is because I have Ballistics on a Hellfire Amulet. If I did not have a Hellfire Amulet with one of these 5 skills, I would probably drop Thrill of the Hunt for Ballistics, because you really do need to use Ballistics. The damage from the rockets is important. And use Ice Blink or the Caltrops or some other way to proc Bane of the Trapped and Cull the Weak instead of Thrill of the Hunt. But yeah, if at all possible, use a Hellfire Amulet. It doesn't have to be this well rolled. You don't have to be a total luck sack like I was. Not that it's perfect, but still. And ideally, Cull the Weak would be the best one you could get. But any of these 5 on there would be absolutely fine. So going to the cube, again, Dawn, there's not really a lot of choice here. Vengeance is so strong that not using Dawn just doesn't make sense. Cindercoat, you could use the Visage of Goons instead. It gives you 50% damage reduction from the Dark Heart rune for Vengeance. You would have both Seethe and Dark Heart going. Convention of Elements, there's not really another choice there. I suppose if you're hardcore and you need the damage reduction, the safety net, you could use Elusive Ring for 6% damage reduction. After you only have to use Shadow Power, Smokescreen, or Vault every 8 seconds, and honestly, that's not really a problem. So for the achievement, you only need to do 55, but I'm going to bump this up to 60 because it shouldn't be much different. And I have gems to upgrade, man. I don't want to do a 55 and upgrade like a level 1 gem. So in playing this build, because you do a ton of area damage, what you can do, if you feel pretty comfortable with yourself, and this is the way you can really kind of milk the build for all it's worth, you can kind of bounce around, get up a whole bunch of density, put yourself in a good position, and just fire away. Especially if you can time your firing away with the fire aspect of your Convention of Elements. That is the dream, the ideal. But some of the time, what you're going to need to do is sort of do a stutter step action and just kind of hit things that you haven't seen yet, especially if there's tight elements or things like winged assassins or Raccoony stalkers afoot that you kind of want to be careful about. But again, really the best way to play it is going to be more aggressive and more focused on milking the good riffs for as much as you can. Because when things are bad for this build, things are pretty bad. Although that's true for most of them these days. Things go downhill, they really go downhill. Really wanted me to hit there. I changed my skill set. Oh, I did. Didn't realize what I did, but I did.
You won't survive that.
Yeah, sometimes you'll do this. You'll you will kill an elite and not even realize you killed an elite. It's awesome.
Not ready yet.
See, I'm not full of vengeance uptime, which is unfortunate. So, especially at this level, it doesn't matter too terribly much. And always keep in mind that you do have the active ability of preparation Invigoration, which is to gain back an amount. Yeah, instantly restore 30 discipline. So do remember that when you need to vault, you definitely can. Come on now. Work with me now. Work with me now. Another level. So yeah, don't be afraid to bounce around a good bit, because 30 discipline is a lot. Especially if you're in a position where you feel kind of either feel threatened or there's just a lot of really juicy packs and you want to line them up and just start wailing away. Especially if you know, you're at say you're in the physical part here and you know, well, it's cold and then it's fire. So if I can line up during the cold, I can just wail on them during the fire and do maximum damage to a whole big old pack.
The Rift Guardian has
That's
arrived.
ideal. That's what you want. Why did he not spawn right there? Come on, game. Come on, game. I totally forgot to go over legendary gems. I am running Taeguk in this run because I think Taeguk is ideal. But again, I don't like Taeguk, and I often run Bane of the Stricken instead. I don't think it's a huge loss, really, but I mean, what you're giving up, really, with Bane of the Stricken over Taeguk is toughness, and toughness is a thing for this build. That is for sure. Like, once you're up, you know, 70 plus, things hit hard. I mean, really hard. So having that little bit of extra armor may be the difference between... Yes, not too bad. Maybe the difference between living and dying. So yeah, just to go over that again. Bane of the Trapped, Zays, and Taeguk. I really feel like that's the best way to run your legendary gems, but you can run Bane Stricken instead of Taeguk if you really want to. So yeah, that should finish up the set overview for each of the Demon Hunter sets. So thanks for watching, folks, and see you next time.